We're doing it now?
We're recording the Roundabout cast right now, Bradley, live right now.
Well, it's
As
not
we
live.
speak.
As you breathe and leave.
Look at all this great content you're missing out on.
Hi, welcome to Roundabout 31. I'm your host, Willer.
I am a absorbent, porous, yellow Bob who lives in a pineapple under the sea, whose name is Bradley.
I'm a chief card critic, Joseph Lloyd, also head vampire critic as well.
I'm Tyler, and I like Pepsi.
I did not look at the schedule this week.
The schedule, I mean, we'll figure it out.
I do not know what we're talking about.
So, Joe's gonna start us off by talking about Dracula, and we're gonna do Stardust Crusaders finally. And then there's gonna be something in the middle, and that something is a wild card to where we haven't decided. But
so this isn't like early 1900s silent film Dracula. This is like a Netflix thing, right?
Yes.
yeah, Joe, let's go right into it. What are you actually talking about here? Because I don't know.
I'm very excited to hear about this.
All right. So Netflix got a deal to be the ones that host that had the streaming rights for the new Stephen Moffat series Dracula. If you don't know who Stephen Moffat is, he is the one that did the Doctor Who revival a few years ago.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. He's also the person that created Sherlock.
No shit.
Yeah. So this is one of his series.
All right.
If you've seen one of his series, you realize they're all the same.
Is Sherlock like Doctor Who? Because I find that hard to believe.
They're all the same in that the characters, it has the Avengers effect where everyone's the exact same character basically in terms of personality types. Everyone makes quick jokes.
Yeah.
There's a cut and paste method to it.
I never heard that effect as you said it described, but after you said it, I was like, yeah, I can kind of see it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna come out and say this. I don't think the show is good.
Oh no!
Joe's coming out on stream.
Oh no.
Congratulations, Joe. You're very brave.
I know. So the show is 3 episodes long. They're each about an hour to an hour 20 minutes long, which is pretty long.
That reminds me of Sherlock even more, where they would release like 2 episodes and then you'd wait a year or 2.
Yeah, Sherlock does like 3 episodes a year and then goes off for 5 years and then gets 3 more episodes. So the story takes the classic tale of Dracula and puts a Stephen Moffat twist on it. So I've seen his other shows. So when the series starts out, it starts out in like the 1800s, like when Dracula takes place. I'm like, oh, we're not gonna do a modern version of it. We're gonna just go through a regular like Dracula tale that's gonna be set during this time. And the first episode I really enjoyed. Like I thought it was a fun time. It's basically Dracula is in his castle and he invites this guy over named Jimmy to kind of get his like law affairs in order. Like, I'm old and decrepit. I'm gonna die soon, so we need to start writing my will.
His lawyer Jimmy, who's writing him a will.
You're telling me there's a guy in the 1800s named Jimmy.
You're telling me Jimmy McGill was in the 1800s in the show.
His name isn't Jimothy.
No, his name is not Jimothy.
Should be.
Jimothy.
Fucking should be.
Alright, so he invites Jimmy over, and I want to make sure. Oh, I'm sorry. His name's not Jimmy. His name's Johnny. His name is Jonathan.
Okay.
Johnny Test.
Better.
So you're telling me Jonathan Joestar is with a vampire,
Yes.
or Johnny Joestar?
So, what's cool about the first episode, the first 2/3 about it, is that it's essentially John. His name is Johnny in the show. They call him Johnny. Is that he's alone in this castle with Dracula, and he's slowly going crazy, and he doesn't understand why. And as the episode continues, Dracula is getting more and more and more like youthful because he's just slowly draining Johnny of his energy. And Johnny finds like all this weird stuff going on. Like he finds zombies in the attic. He finds a baby vampire that's a zombie. All this other stuff. And eventually, like Dracula's just like, "Yep, I'm a vampire. I have to go kill everyone in England now." and then some things happen, and Johnny ends up getting turned into a zombie, and makes his way into a nunnery being run by Sister Agatha. There's also in the between this episode, it's like they're having like an interview kind of thing where Agatha is asking what happened at Dracula's castle. So now we're caught up at the present, and it's revealed that Agatha is Agatha von Helsing.
Ooh.
Which was the first kind of big red flag for me.
Isn't there a show called Helsing about female Helsing?
No, there's an anime called Helsing about Helsing.
Yeah.
But there's a female vampire hunting show.
I'm gonna. What is the Helsing reference? Because I said ooh, but I was being a fraud.
So
I don't really know.
Tale, there was an old man named Dr. Van Helsing that was the one studying vampires and told them how to kill vampires.
Okay, cool.
So since then, Van Helsing's always been kind of
a vampire hunter.
Right. But he's always been an old man, and old men aren't very charismatic when it comes to movie screens and so forth.
So he's gonna be a hot girl now.
A nun.
Hot nun.
So they go. Dracula tracks down Johnny, who escaped his castle. Bunch of shenanigans ensued. And during this time, they're introducing all the vampire like mythos about him. Like it's all the classic stuff. Like he's like light hurts him, stakes will kill him. He doesn't like crosses.
Has to be invited into a home.
Yes, and that's a big one. That's what I really like.
Cannot cross running water.
Cannot cross running water.
Garlic.
Has to have his own soil to sleep on when he goes to bed.
Yes.
In a coffin.
Allergic to garlic.
Allergic to garlic. Like these are all.
I stretched really hard and I groaned into the microphone, and I just know everyone's gonna listen to that and be like, "What the fuck was he doing?" Or I just wanted to explain myself for the people out there.
So
I didn't even hear you. I think you're good.
That they were introducing those things, because I feel like a lot of times modern interpretations of vampires want to cut those things out, but I think those are really key to make what a vampire is metaphorically.
Those are the most fun parts. Well, metaphorically, what does a vampire mean to you, Joe?
So metaphorically, a vampire is supposed to represent someone that feeds off of society and tries to climb its way up in society off of feeding off other people in their position.
Like those filthy garlic haters.
Right. So like the idea behind the vampire mythos, all these steps are essentially ways that you would protect yourself from a vampire in both real life and in like metaphorical sense of like a monster. Like the first things first is like if you don't let them into your house, don't let them into your lives, they can't harm you. If you're of goodwill and good morals, bearing a cross, you're going to prevent them from corrupting you. Let's see, what else? I don't know about the garlic part.
It's just fun.
Yeah, it's just fun. But like, you know, and the big thing about the stake is that they're mortal. Like, you can kill them by just stabbing with a piece of wood. And that they can't be in the sun because they have to do things at night. Vampires will never harm you. Vampires never come out when you're at your brightest moment. They'll always come out at your lowest moment, night and day, that kind of stuff. So, like, that's kind of like the idea behind the literature system of a vampire. Like, okay, cool. So episode 1 ends. I'm like, all right, I'm enjoying this. Episode 2 happens, and I'm just like, Episode 2 takes place on a boat, and basically it's a murder mystery of Dracula killing people on the boat. The problem being is, since it's a film, you already know who Dracula is because it's like, oh, that's the guy that plays Dracula. That's Dracula. He's killing everybody. And they don't try to hide it either. It's just mainly like him toying with passengers and so forth.
Okay.
That episode was really boring. I'm not gonna lie. I just really did not enjoy it as much. And then, so at the end, I'm after watching this and thinking about it, Araki really did just take the story of Dracula and then just twisted a few things around for part 1.
Araki of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure fame.
Yes.
In case
because
you don't know.
The end of this episode is the ship catches in flames and Dracula gets into his coffin and sinks to the bottom of the sea.
Oh.
He's trapped there.
But there's 2 coffins, and Erina is in one of them. And
yeah.
that explains that.
Yeah. So here's the part that made me roll my eyes, is that Dracula wakes up again, and he's in a modern setting now. and I'm just like,
Ugh.
oh no.
Well,
Okay.
I feel like that could be an interesting season too. But from what you just say, felt like they didn't even try with the 1800 setting.
Yeah, and like you have 3 episodes, so you do 2 of your episodes in the setting, and then the last episode you're just like, oh, we'll just put it in modern.
Oh,
London.
you said this is 3 episodes total?
Yeah,
Oh, this is British as fuck.
yeah.
Oh, okay, I see.
And then it turns out that Agatha Helsing had was an aunt of someone else, and then now her great niece is the head of the vampire division of England or something like that.
Are you telling me that they've been like having a cult hunting vampires when there's only been one the entire time? It hasn't been around for
They had
like.
government budget too. Like they had helicopters and armored
Wait,
trucks. and they
Wait,
had-
there hasn't been more vampires than Dracula? There's not like what?
Nope.
You've got to be kidding me.
And they have
Nope.
a vampire division.
Yep.
This is like if the Belmonts like didn't fight any other monster and just existed to kill Dracula, except
Yep.
not written even well at all. Oh,
I'm gonna
Yep.
make my own vampire division in real life, and we're not gonna fight vampires like they did for 100-something years.
well, just in
Yep.
case.
And when this happened, I was just like, oh my god, what? And the thing is, like, I'm not opposed to having like 18th century Dracula being the modern setting, and then like part of the whole story is him adapting and having to adjust. The problem being is that you take all of that character development and put it into one episode. You're just like, okay, there's no point. You just wanted to do this because you wanted to do this, you know?
Yeah, I feel like What We Do in the Shadows. I haven't seen it, but it seems. Oh, it seems like a better take on modern vampire than that.
I love What We Do in the Shadows, and I was actually about to bring it up. It is
Hey.
such a fun take on modern day vampires.
That's why I'm the host. I can segue into things I haven't even seen.
So the series, and then there's some crazy shit that happens in this episode. Like for example, Dracula has a lawyer.
I like that.
Okay,
Mm.
here's the thing: Dracula has been in a coffin for 127 years, and he has a lawyer in the modern times.
And he sees a billboard that says, "Are you a vampire? Need a lawyer? Call me."
How do you think he feels about erections lasting longer than 4 hours? Is that just like an inconvenience to him, or is that like 4 minutes?
I probably just like 4 minutes.
Why is this relevant? Wait,
Okay.
what did I miss?
This is always relevant.
So the crazy thing is Dracula literally gets onto the beach, he runs away, hides in the house, and then they track him down and they capture him. This all happens within 24 hours, and they put him in a box that like essentially always has the sun being able to be positioned into it from reflecting mirrors, and it's just basically like it's a vampire proof box, like you can't get out of it.
So this division, as much as we shit on it, is really good.
Yeah.
They're well trained.
And then literally within 24 hours, this guy comes up. And during this time, Dracula's been in this box. It's been like, I'm Dracula's lawyer. Our law firm has been Dracula's lawyer for the past 127 years.
Oh, it's the same lawyer as the past. So just
Like it's the same law firm that he invested in. But it's like, what the like it's and he's just like, you've been trampling on his rights as a person. You can't keep him here.
Oh man,
I would have been like, if anybody was in there, I'd be like, guys,
we gotta start over.
or
Does
even
Dracula ever go blah blah blah?
he does.
Okay,
know-
okay. It
Alright.
can't be a 1 out of
I
10,
will say
man.
everything around Dracula I really liked. I liked what the actor did. I thought it was really interesting where the actor was more of a modern type of persona in the 1800s, and that kind of made him stand out from everybody because he's a lot more intelligent, and he was a lot more like aloof to what was happening and blah blah blah. And he was just like, "Oh, I've been around for 800 years. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to eat you." And it's kind of like terrifying as this thing is a god walking around and it's just like casually strolling up to people and talking to them kind of deal.
I've watched enough isekai to enjoy that concept.
Yeah.
Basically an isekai.
One thing I really enjoyed too about him was that his fingernails are never clean. They're always like gnarled and like long and everything. But you can tell there's like he hides his hands a lot, so you can't like really tell. You don't realize he's a monster until the hands are already on you, kind of deal.
Dio got me into fingernail painting vampires. That's kind of my aesthetic now, as far as vampires go.
I think their fingernails are painted in What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, I think so too, from what I've seen.
But like, the last episode literally killed the entire series. Like we talked about a few episodes ago about like endings that kill a series for you. And this was one of them. This last episode was just terrible. Like it just didn't make any sense. And eventually it turns out that like all these things that like he has rules for are because he's afraid of death. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Just make them a thing. Just make them rules. There doesn't have to be an explanation for them.
It's like we already have a mythology for vampires.
Yeah. You don't have to tell me like, oh, well, Dracula's afraid of death, and that's why he can't go out in the sun and be around crosses. That's why he's weak to them. Like that's dumb.
I mean, all humans are afraid of death instinctively.
Yeah, I'm like, no fucking shit, he's afraid of death.
Can we do a one on Castlevania as a segue, just to compensate for this?
I was about to say, like, Castlevania just sounds categorically better than this, and Dracula in Castlevania is fucking rad.
Yeah. Dracula in Castlevania is an S tier character.
Yeah.
Oh man, that show had some great writing and charisma between Alucard and
Trevor and Sophia.
Oh, I love Sophia.
My only complaint is I wish there was like one more episode that like really built out their relationships a little more, that had them doing more stuff together. But
them in the library. Yeah, season 3's confirmed. Them in the library kind of sold me on their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
No, is Dracula going to be continued?
Yes, season 3 is announced.
No, not Castlevania. Dracula.
Oh, we don't talk about that anymore.
I don't know how Dracula can continue because, spoiler alert for a show on Netflix. Dracula dies at the end of the series.
What?
Oh,
in
that's
3 episodes. He dies in 3 episodes.
That doesn't mean anything with Dracula's stories. He'll be back in 100 years, and then it'll be future lawyers. Joe, this sounds like trash, and I think we're good on it.
We're gonna have cyborg Dracula going to court against a pirate.
What if this isn't really Dracula, and it's just part 1 JoJo's prequel setting up for part 2?
It's actually Acme.
It's actually Alucard, and he goes to Egypt, and then a Japanese man needs to go kick his ass.
Yeah. Anyways, I thought I would bring this up because I saw it on Netflix. I tried it out. I was like, I don't think anyone would like this. So I just probably suggest y'all to not watch it unless you kind of want to give yourself a headache for a day.
I really liked this talk. It's a fun change of pace to talk about stuff that's not like our favorite things in the whole world. So
we do it from time to time.
Yeah, this is cool.
If you want vampires, go watch Castlevania or What We Do in the Shadows.
We'll do a proper talk on Castlevania.
I'm trying to think what vampire media I've consumed. JoJo's is probably the closest thing.
Yeah, what is your favorite vampires? I guess I have to go with Dio. He's not very vampire. He's very much his own thing, but I think he's
just pretty vampire. Part 3 Dio's pretty gay.
Yeah, but like a good gay. I mean, all.
I guess one time at Christmas I watched Hotel Transylvania with my family, and I thought I would hate it. Actually thought the movie was fucking hilarious. Really liked that version of Dracula.
That girl in that movie has a bit of a fan base, right?
She sure does.
That has way too much of a fan base.
Right.
I like 2006 Van Helsing because it's really bad.
That was fun. I love that.
It's a fun movie, but it's bad.
It is bad, but it's a fun movie.
I'm trying to think of other vampires.
Dracula
World is a vampire.
Lost Boys, classic.
Oh, D. Greyman is a manga that has a really cool vampire in it.
Wasn't there a movie that came out not too long ago about vampires? And it was like some teenager and his like mom.
I love my mom and her multi-hit bites.
Oh no, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. That's my favorite.
Oh my god.
I remember that. I didn't watch it.
Oh, do y'all remember 30 Days of Night?
I remember 28 Days Later.
So 30 Days of Night is it was set in Alaska where they have like, their long like month where it's nighttime the entire time.
Vampires can just fucking go ham.
Yeah, a small town just gets like invaded by vampires. And like the vampires are like anime antagonists where like each one has their own like personality and like what they want, and then like what they have like the edgy wild female character, and it was great.
You gotta have one of those.
It was really good.
A story I was writing has a vampire as a prominent character, and
that's a good vampire.
That's my favorite vampire, but that's not fair to say because he doesn't actually exist.
I like the Warhammer vampires.
I bet they're not dumb.
They are not dumb. They're not very dumb at all.
All right, I think vampire talk's good.
No. Two more. Obviously, I think a section of our fan base would be disappointed if we didn't mention the Blade franchise.
Okay. Some motherfuckers always trying to ice skate uphill.
Like Blade is great, and then Fright Night, 2011.
Fright Night.
Anton Yelchin, great actor. Rest in peace.
I don't know that one. Blade's getting like a reboot, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I posted in our little chat here, the cumulative sentence that explains why my Dracula has those rules, and I think it's pretty dumb.
More like Wackula.
Yeah.
I think that's a good note to leave this off. We will read this off screen.
Zoe Feet.
Well, that's the first thing that you said in this segment, but that's not what we're going to talk about, Bradley. I'm sorry. We're talking
about TemTem.
We're going to give our first impressions on TemTem that just really came out yesterday. Did any of you other two check it out?
I did not.
I've seen gameplay footage of it and Skill Up talk about it.
Cool.
I was very pleased because I was able to make a very cute character, which is all that matters in a video game.
I haven't seen anything about TemTem. I haven't touched anything about TemTem. I just have too many things. I don't want to dive into another Pokemon game. I'd rather just play Warhammer for the 10th hour.
Yeah.
10th hour, yeah, right. TemTem is a Pokemon-like game, by their own admission. It is a Pokemon online MMO with quotation marks. That's some MMO elements. You get to see people walk around in the same maps as you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a more collaborative features, but as far as I am, I'm almost at the first gym. I didn't even actually make it all the way to the first gym. Where are you at, Rob?
It really is. I mean, it is Pokemon, and like Willis said, they admitted. I think essentially the goal of the project is they want to make their own Pokemon game, and these people are clearly longtime Pokemon fans, and there are features that the creators knew they always wanted in a Pokemon game, or maybe like adjustments they wanted to the formula. So this is kind of their chance to do that.
For me, I'll get like the two big negatives out of the way first.
Yeah, because there are negatives.
And it's the character designs and the Pokemon designs. Sorry, TemTem.
Yeah.
There's a TemTem that's a little bird thing. I think that thing looks hideous. A lot of those early TemTem, I mean, there's some alright ones. I haven't ran into anything that like has blown me away. Is it maybe the colors? I'm trying to analyze what it is that rubs me off the wrong way.
It really is strange because, like, we're talking about the negatives first. I myself have a very large list of positives, but the thing is, I really just feel like compared to Pokemon, which it's only fair to compare this to Pokemon, the designs for all the TemTem just frankly are not nearly as good as Pokemon designs, and even if almost every other aspect of the game was better, it can be debated that the designs for your Mons are the most important thing in this genre.
Tyler posted a picture of a bunch of designs, and I think half of them are okay, Okay to good. I really like that top right nature one, for example. That one called Kaku's on my team. That's pretty cute.
These toxic one TemTems look really cool. I think both of them look really cool.
I like the octopus, the water one, toxic.
That crystal one looks badass.
I will say, I haven't played this yet, but looking at this, they at least have their character design done well, and that they've obviously done a silhouette study to make them unique enough.
Yeah, they have a consistent art style, which I'm glad for, but I don't know what it is. I think there's so many like unnatural parts to all of them, which even recent Pokemon games like
well, I think
this one's a furry fox. This one is like algae on an anchor, which is weird, right? But like at least it has like a normal natural look to some parts of it. When you look at some of the TemTem, they just have like these really colorful parts. I guess they're more monster than animal.
Yeah.
Pokemon are still mostly animal. Even like stuff where it's a chandelier, it still has like these design elements that are hard to really put your finger on.
Yeah, I guess that's the big difference when it comes to the design, is that pretty much all Pokemon designs take some inspiration from a real life animal or object. TemTem really tries to be, they really do try, like you said, to be monsters, like they're their own thing, but
I feel like it's the intersection of Digimon and Pokemon, and that's where TemTem lies.
There you go.
And I think this is like real. I think this is cool because they've obviously tried to create unique looking creatures based off of some like they said, it looks like they said, hey, let's make like a Pokemon based off of like a octopus or something. All right, now let's amp it up a bit and then combine it with like
the octopus looks like a mushroom or a penis.
It does a little bit, but
little penis.
They obviously took some of these and went up to another stage, which like I'm looking at this Piranha, okay? I think this guy looks great. And if you want to talk about things like water Pokemon and the last few like regions, like obviously we got Octolock, the fighting octopus this round. That guy's great. But every other generation has had some type of just, here's a fish, and it's like Basculin. I'm not even Magikarp.
But I like that as a design follow through, because you also have your bird, and like that's just something consistent that every time you start one, it's like, oh, there's the bird. I like all their natural designs.
It's probably me getting into a personal hate for the fish, to be honest.
That's fine too. I feel like there is a subset of people though that might enjoy like straight up monster designs, and I think they'll really like the TemTem.
Yeah.
TemTem, go ahead.
I just, as long as I can find 6 that I think looks cool, that's all I need, because usually in Pokemon, that's all I do too, is I just find the 6 that I think look coolest.
See, for me, it's hard. It's like more like I find 6 I don't like in every region. I end up liking all the Pokemon designs. TemTem aside, the character designs are horrible. Like
the faces are very not cute.
The rival looks so lame, and he's like, oh, people have been asking for an asshole rival, and then they came up with this. But that aside, an interesting part of the game is that it's pretty much all 2v2s.
Oh, that is interesting.
That is awesome, and hasn't been done since Coliseum. I thought Coliseum was difficult a little bit because of the 2v2s.
It definitely leads it to be difficult. I will say it's kind of exhausting to go through the routes, because each battle is like pretty long. Because not only is it 2v2s, but very early on you start running into people with 4 Pokemon per team, like pairs of people where they each have 2. I feel like as much as people will dog on it, Pokemon has this curve to where like if you want to play it super easy, you can. TemTem's pretty hardcore already. I would not like to Nuzlocke this because 2v2 is horrible for Nuzlocks, and these guys are
death.
Huh?
That's just twice the death.
They can both gang up on one of your TemTem and they'll just die. But it's cool though, because like if what you have been looking for is like a Pokemon game that is not catered for all ages, it's like this is a Pokemon game where it's like, no, you're gonna be at like this pretty difficult level curve the whole way through. I'm pretty early on, so I'm gonna have to revisit that thought.
Yeah,
I think they're doing
I feel like 10-year-old Bradley would probably get stuck in this game because he would know how to strategize.
Because the routes have a lot of trainers too to also add to that. So it's that's why I could only play. I didn't get to the first gym. I was like, oh man, I've already put in like an hour or two, just by playing.
I'm looking at pictures, and there's just something weird about the environments that don't seem nearly as appealing to me, and it might be just the art style. Like
I think the environments are pretty. I definitely I prefer the Pokemon ones, but this is definitely going for like it has that indie Unity polish charm.
Yeah, it does. That might be it.
And that is an art style that I like. You could see it in like a bunch of 3D indie Unity games. Like it's something you might see in Super Lucky's Tale or Hat in Time kind of art style.
Dude, if we're moving into aesthetics though, this game, the animations, especially in battles, pretty fucking good.
The catch animation is so cool.
Like a lot of people, that's a big gripe they had about, Sword and Shield, for example. The animations in this for pretty much every TemTem and just about every move look really good to me.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm also seeing like a variety of like battle arenas for like when you actually do combat in a specific area. And even these are like pretty dang detailed.
I quite like the environments myself. There's some other things they do, like they give you like an Estus flask. So they're like, we know these routes are long, and we're placing the Pokemon centers in them pretty far in between. But you get like a little Estus flask to where you get to heal your whole team once per route. So you kind of get to endure instead of having to run back to heal all the time, which is nice. What's nice about this is the promise of them being able to patch anything, right? With Pokemon, you're gonna get your DLC third version and now DLC expansion pack, but they're not gonna iteratively patch. With this, you're gonna get the whole like, oh, this Pokemon is unbalanced, we're gonna buff it. This TemTem's too strong, we're gonna nerf it, which I think is cool.
That's an advantage.
That is an advantage. Granted, Pokemon has found a way through sheer diversity of having metas where like this piece of shit Pokemon is really good now. For example, like Torkoal right now in Sword and Shield is really highly used, and Arcanine is the most used Pokemon in VGC battles and stuff like that.
Interesting.
But this is gonna have like a proper, almost every TemTem's gonna be usable, which is cool. I really like. That's probably what gets me most interested is like, how are they going to nerf and buff and add more content? There's a bunch of areas that have like a work in progress plaque, which is pretty cute.
It is an early access.
Yeah,
you should say that.
And it is $35, but I can already tell it's going to be like at least a 20-hour adventure. So I think it's worth.
Another thing is if this follows traditional indie expansion on projects, is a lot of indie publisher or like a lot of indie titles. I'm thinking like Risk of Rain off the top of my head. All their content post-launch is free and it's just updates, but usually they have a publisher behind that, which theirs is Gearbox. They have money being funded to them, so I don't know about this team specifically, but if they have a
bundle as their publisher,
this team's gonna make a lot of money because a Pokemon competitor, even if it's not gonna get a fraction of the fan base, a small fraction of the Pokemon fan base is massive. Like, they're gonna do great, I think. I'm really happy for them. I think it's healthy to have a competitor here.
And
your Pokemon follows you around in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it
take it or leave it.
I'm surprised that feature hasn't been in more fucking Pokemon games. But
it's a crime.
Going off on what you're saying about, trying to grab a small fraction of the Pokemon fan base, I think they had really good kind of timing for their launch, because I think we're still in an area where a lot of the Sword Shield hate has died down, but I still think a lot of people are
willing to try. They're at least willing to try something new right now. I will say one thing. It's weird, right? The battle system has me of two minds. I've gotten used to the stamina system, and I like how you can overexert your Pokemon.
That's cool.
So, like, if you overexert your Pokemon, you can still do the attack, but you get hurt.
Yeah, I think the main reason I like stamina over the PP system that Pokemon uses is, like, in all my years playing Pokemon, the only time that the PP mechanic has ever affected me at all is, like, maybe by the very last fight of the Elite Four, one of my moves will be out of PP.
But even then, nowadays there are ways, like, they have, like, in between healers that you can use and so forth.
Yeah.
See, Pokemon is a really complex game when you get down to it. If Game Freak wanted to, they could make this impossibly hard challenge, which hackers do, and they're really fun to play through.
Yeah, but hackers do that, and
right.
Game Freak will never do that.
Right, but the point is, Pokemon is already so deep. Some of these mechanics, I feel like, are just adding complexity to the one area where we didn't need more complexity. And also, like, they removed all the RNG from moves, right?
Ooh.
Though moves can still miss, I think that's the only RNG left.
Mm-hmm.
This should be, on paper, something I'm super down for. But what's weird about that is all these early game moves I'm getting are so boring. They don't have many cool effects. It's just like poison enemy for 3 turns. If you use this move with a poison partner, it'll do extra damage. This move has 10 more damage than that move, but 2 less stamina than that move. And even early game Pokemon moves, we've hit this point where we have such a move diversity where it's like, yo, Bubble sucks, but it can lower speed. And then you have a weird thing like Mud Slap. It's weak in early game, but it lowers accuracy for sure. So you get in these situations where if you are playing a challenge run, these little extra things that the moves can do are really interesting. So far I'm underwhelmed by the moves, but I'm gonna check back into that thought when I see the late game moves and see if there's...
The verdict's up in the air. I really want to see, like, what the first big TemTem tournament play looks like, you know?
So, while the moves are underwhelming, the abilities are great.
Yeah, the abilities are really cool.
They're not, like, that different from Pokemon abilities, but what's cool is that each TemTem so far has had a unique one. So they're each automatically filling a niche. And they're all, like, solid ones. I haven't run into any stinkers so far. There's a cool one, like, if you get double targeted, you deflect that second attack to your partner. Ooh. There's like a basic, like, very Pokemon-esque one where attacks that will hit both of the other TemTem do extra damage. So I'm super down for that, and I really think we're gonna have a nice balanced roster of TemTem. But yeah, like, so far, very interested to get further into it. Got a lot of games going on, so that's gonna take a little bit. Bummed that they kept EVs, and I think they kept IVs. Like, that's one thing I would for sure remove from the Pokemon formula. Granted, I'm sure it's like Sword and Shield where it's easy to manipulate those, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how the manipulation for that works, if you have to breed them or if there's like a guy that can change them. I don't know.
I'm guessing that this seems like the kind of team that would give you a guy that can let you just train them up, right?
Yeah, because they seem like they're all about cutting out bullshit, so
yeah,
there's got to be a guy.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you mentioned about the no RNG stuff and how that doesn't feel good. It's kind of funny because any game that I've played that's been like a demo or beta that's been like, oh, we're going to take out all the RNG of these type of games and just put them, like, it just be straightforward. It's always turned out to be a lot less interesting than those games.
Sometimes you kind of want some bullshit.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
Hearthstone, for example, there were a bunch of other card games that came out that really were like, oh, we're not going to do any outside of RNG in it. Like, all your cards do what they do, but it's still Hearthstone. But it wasn't nearly as fun without that little bit of RNG. I say a little bit, Hearthstone has a lot of RNG, but like when you have none of it, it feels really empty and feels really like, oh, here are my stones I have to put in place now. I just have to follow these steps and I win the game. Or if I miss this step, I lose the game. Like, it's very obvious, like, cut and dry of, like, if you win or lose. Which can be very not heartbreaking, but, like, frustrating and just kind of, like, eye-rolling, and it makes things just not as interesting as they could be.
Yeah.
I guess it is kind of exciting whenever you, like in digital card games, when you get to a point where you're about to play a card and like, okay, when I play this card, there's a 70% chance I lose the game, but a 30% chance I have the coolest fucking win ever.
Right.
So there's kind of some excitement there.
Yeah. And that's like, and I play war games a lot. And I've done games where we've just done the statistical average of things happening whenever you're like, because there's a bunch of dice rolling that happen in these games. And I've done just the statistical average like gameplays of them, and it's not nearly as fun. It becomes very obvious what units are a lot better when you just take the averages are than the other units that have that sort of randomness tied into them. And I think a little of randomness goes a long way, making everything a lot more appealing and dynamic, and just making everything just a bit different every time you play it.
Then you got like board games like Betrayal at the House of the Hill, where it's like this game is like 80% RNG, and you're gonna have a blast because bullshit's just gonna happen, and you're all gonna have a good laugh about it.
And those games you go into and think like, oh, if anything happens to me, I can just chalk it up to a bunch of bullshit happening to me, and it's not anyone else's fault but the game's. Which feels good and feels good sometimes.
This RNG topic would definitely be like once we start getting into late game TemTem and PvP TemTem, that's when this shit will really pop off. What else? Y'all got any other TemTem thoughts?
What are some of the like MMO mechanics in it?
Nothing so far. You just get to see trainers around, but I'm sure Bradley played the demo. So did you run into anything in the demo?
So the MMO mechanics are personally what I kind of always wanted in Pokemon, because
really
I have played like fan-made Pokemon MMOs before, and they kind of got bullshit where you'd be in Pallet Town and some dude is walking around with Giratina, and
I think that's kind of the appeal.
So I don't know,
of the MMO
like, basically what you're looking at here is, like Willer said, you'll see other trainers running around. You'll see them, their username, their Pokemon with them, and you can go up to them, and you can like select nearby players from a menu, and you can be like, hey, let's trade, or hey, let's battle. Like you could, I'm pretty sure you could play the whole game without interacting with other players. You could just play it, like a Pokemon game. I think the way I described it to Willer, and the way I still want to look at it, is the multiplayer aspect where the people are running around is just a fun interface for finding people to battle or trade with.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think people would just want matchmaking in lobbies for that kind of stuff, or GTS. I'm gonna say I'm a little under.
Is there a GTS in this?
I'm sure that they'll definitely add it eventually, right? I trust these guys to really chock this full of features.
It would seem crazy for them to not have GTS, because that's like
fucking Sword and Shield doesn't have GTS. A lot of people.
Very.
I think that's because they're gonna add it to Bank or whatever. But all they have is Wonder Trade, so I'm sure they'll add it to this. If Pokemon doesn't have something, they'll add it to this. This will definitely be also like you're gonna get Gen 1 and 2 with the same purchase. I think they're gonna add Pokemon to a TemTem to this before moving on to TemTem 2. Right now, I'm a little underwhelmed by the MMO features, but I think that'll change in the late game when it's just more than just running into each other. Because you also get these goofy scenarios where when you walk into a house in Pokemon and you talk to the two NPCs in there, one of them might have an item, the other one's going to have fluff dialogue. Cool. Yeah. You walk into the house, there's 20 children running around in circles having a weird party orgy, and the two you're trying to find the two NPCs that you need to talk to in this house, and it gets a little cluttered. It's like, oh, you're the NPC.
Can you play this game with a controller?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
I'm playing it with my PS4 controller.
Okay, good. I would be very upset. Oh no, your PS4 turned off.
Yes. It did. All right. Is that good for our TemTem first impressions? I'm definitely gonna. Once I get deeper, I'll talk about this.
Should Joe get TemTem?
Joe should. I think everyone, if you like Pokemon games, I think I would recommend this. It's definitely worth a try for everyone.
Yeah, I think it's at the point where I wouldn't say if you like Pokemon, you will like this, but I will say if you like Pokemon, you should try this.
If you like Pokemon, there's a good chance you'll find something to like here. And keep in mind, early access is kind of like a cheap trick because they're like flying at the seat of their pants right now, trying to patch everything. Like the Twitter is very open about all the problems they're having.
Yet, but I know other people have had more than one crash.
My first experience with the game was a crash in the tutorial, so that was pretty good. But yeah, definitely worth a try. For $35, you're gonna get a game that will definitely expand into something pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it's coming to Switch eventually.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't think that. Maybe we'll just go off. Then you have to.
Will they ever allow this to be in a Nintendo Direct? Or are they like, these motherfuckers?
I was wondering that. I wonder if they're gonna be like.
Here's the thing. I feel like Nintendo would allow it, but I think Pokemon Company would be the one that'd be upset more than anything.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like Nintendo HQ, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, we want to show that we support these creators, and it's more money for us if they buy from our eShop." But I bet the Pokemon Company Game Freak would be like, "No."
I think we're giving Nintendo a little too much credit. It's like, yeah, I guess we'll promote the competitor to our biggest selling franchise that we are still a parent of.
I will say, I think I would be very surprised if it showed up in a Nintendo Direct.
Yeah,
maybe one of those indie directs.
Yeah, I could see it in an indie. I think this is gonna blow up pretty well for indie games. So
the pig TemTem for Smash.
Ooh. No, he's all right. He's all right.
My OC TemTem character for Smash because they look awesome.
All right, let's do some JoJo talk. I just realized JoJo's is its own show, so this is no longer the Roundabout Cast. But I also don't know the name of our JoJo show, so
it's the Roundabout Cast. What are you talking about?
That'll be figured out in post.
Yeah,
I'll brainstorm that later.
Damn it!
What's wrong, Joe?
Oh, Monster Prom got an update. And
Monster Prom got an update?
Yeah, I love Monster Prom. It's one of my favorite games.
Is that the thing where they look like Bratz dolls?
Yeah.
Oh no, that's Monster High. Okay,
Hey, can I talk about Monster Prom? Because I really like this game.
Oh, yeah, you showed me Monster Prom. That actually was fire.
The only Monster Prom we're talking about is what's going on in Dio's castle,
our JoJo show is called Talk Like an Egyptian.
Alright, that's not bad.
Yep.
It'll be considered. Alright, JoJo's Part 3, the big one. The only part that matters because it has the strongest stand and the strongest boy.
And the strongest, just like...
Jotaro Kujo.
Oh!
So, Part 3 is really interesting because this is the part where I think JoJo's blew up as a phenomenon. It was the first explosion. It didn't really blow up until 2012 with the anime, and that's when it went international. But
yeah, I feel like a lot of people, if they've seen nothing else of JoJo's, they've seen Jotaro.
Yes.
Like they know him.
Well, I mean, seeing Jotaro and Dio is how I got into JoJo's because in 2006, young Willer picks up Jump Ultimate Stars for Christmas, opens it up early, and then rewraps it, and my brother totally finds out. But regardless, still got it in though.
Yeah, fucking Jotaro and Dio are the only two assholes they put in the Jump games. Well, sometimes Jonathan, I guess.
So Jotaro and Dio are the two playable characters, and I'm like, who are these fucking weirdos with their robots? And why do they have so many support characters that look nothing like them? I was like, because Johnny's in that game, Jolene, all the JoJos and Gyro are in that game.
Oh, that's crazy that they're in that game.
And I'm just like, who the fuck are all these? A lot of people use the Josuke support that would heal you online. I would use it, and I had no idea what it was. So I just decide to read it, and I see a review that's like, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure starts with Jotaro in prison, because it was talking about the OVA anime for this.
Oh yeah.
A whole bombshell. And then I start the anime, or the manga, and I'm like, what the fuck is this, like, 20th century, nothing to do with prison and ghosts?
Yeah, where's Prison Boy?
Prison ghosts.
Eventually, I get to my prison boy, very excited, and the realization hits me that in my first read-through of Part 3, I actually didn't like it too much.
Oh.
And I was really bummed out because... and we're live. Technical difficulties murdered me. But we should be good now. I think I was midway through talking about how disappointed I was in Part 3 the first time that I watched it.
Yeah.
Or read it, rather.
Mm-hmm.
I think that brings us into proper discussion of it. My problems with Part 3, especially the first time, were Jotaro and the first half of Part 3. And I still hold that first half complaint to this day. I now like Jotaro as a character. The other parts really help flesh him out too, which makes him more endearing in this part in retrospect. But the introduction of stands is really cool, but the stands that you get in the beginning aren't very necessarily interesting. They're just like, oh, you have more stands.
They're not incredibly fun. I feel like going from Part 2 to Part 3 was basically 2 steps forward, 1 step back in Iraqi developing what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because Part 2 really nailed down the whole... The way to get out of this fight isn't by punching harder, it's by figuring out how to punch your opponent correctly, essentially. Whereas when Part 3 starts, it is, I gotta punch this guy harder for most of the time. There are some exceptions to that first half, but most of the time, I just need to like hit this person enough times so where they stop moving. I feel.
It's underselling it a little bit. The fights,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many of them, and they're not as high quality as the other stand of the week fights that we get from Part 4 onwards.
Right.
So it has the most number of encounters, and a lot of them aren't that interesting in the first half. You get stuff like Empress, which is not that interesting of an encounter. It's just like there's a wart on Joseph, and he has to figure out.
I love that encounter because it's so different from everything else.
Yeah, I think that's one of the better ones.
I like Lovers.
Lovers is a classic one,
Lovers has a really good climax, and the part where Jotaro makes himself a bridge is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And here's your receipt is amazing. But then you also have stuff like Polnareff versus Avdol, where it's like this fight boiled down to Avdol shooting a flame underground and making a statue melt to look like magician's red, and it's like
and then you have the car that just runs them over.
We have a car that shoots gasoline, and that's all right. From the first half, I think the big standout arc for me is Emperor and the Hanged Man, of course. That's a really good one. It also has a lot of story influence, so it doesn't feel as fillery as the others felt at the time. Not much character development is happening aside from the important ones like Hanged Man. And I also really, really like Death 13, where Kakyoin has to figure out how to get out of this dream scenario while everyone thinks that he's insane. That one's really fun too. But aside from that, I don't think many of the encounters were that interesting, and even on my first go-through, it was really weighing down on me just how long that first half was dragging on. And I didn't see an end in sight because I didn't know there would be an Egypt arc, so it was just like, oh my god. Like, I'm halfway through the part looking at the chapter count, and I feel like we haven't done very much.
Yeah. It's like in the shows in the part split into 2 seasons, and that first season it really, and like there's even a whole character that gets introduced in Style Society that has no relevance to the plot.
Yeah,
the little girl.
And it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Do you remember when they fought the sun?
Yeah. So the sun is like a 1-chapter gag that they stretched out into 1 full episode of the anime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm a big time anime watcher, and I remember I was watching this and I go, Willard, this is just Team Rocket every single episode, and it ends with Stans blasting off again.
That's right. Yeah.
I love the sun episode because it's so quick and it's funny. And you get that.
I like the sun chapter.
Yeah. Makes sense.
The anime has also this thing where like they really fleshed out some fight. I enjoy part 3 a lot more because of the anime, but also some fights really drag on. Like you have that part where the lovers is talking about how they're the most strongest, and they're like dancing and doing the can for a whole goddamn minute, saying most. And I'm like, this does not translate well into anime. This is just annoying. What would have been a one-panel gag with like a speech bubble where like most is just written all over it and you can just quickly interpolate your eye is dragged out into 40 seconds of annoying voice acting.
I do not remember this stand at all.
The lovers goes inside your brain and then makes you feel the pain that the user is feeling.
Yeah, I think the lovers...
Is that the one episode where Hierophant Green learns how to shrink?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the lovers was the first one where I was like, okay, that's a pretty cool one.
Yeah.
You didn't like
Inyaba and her whole zombies?
Justice is cool, but again, it's dragged out in the anime, I feel like.
It also has a terrible climax where it's just a big suck.
That's another thing. Jotaro's just pulling out these moves out of his ass, and they're not cool moves either. Like
Starfinger!
Who would think of Starfinger as an attack?
Starfinger!
Araki.
I do like Oingo Boingo.
Oingo Boingo.
Dude.
Oingo Boingo's on the second half, though.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the second half. Let's
Okay,
talk
we'll
about,
talk. Okay.
Let's talk about the characters too. So we have a cast of 6. I
Right.
believe we have Jotaro, we have Old Joseph, we have Kakyoin, Avdol, Polnareff, and Iggy. How do y'all feel about this cast by themselves, and how do you feel about them in relation to other JoJo casts?
I actually really think the Part 3 cast is my third favorite behind 6 and 7. I really like the Part 3 cast.
There's something endearing about them. They're not the deepest, but they're a good collection of different personalities.
Yeah, I think one of the big things about the cast is that, like, and I think it comes down to interactions. Like, whenever I think about the cast and them interacting with each other, the one that comes to mind every time is Polnareff and Kakyoin doing this stupid-ass handshake in the submarine as they're dying.
Yeah.
And that makes me laugh every time, but it perfectly encapsulates like what's going on this whole adventure. Is that
I think of Jotaro getting butt fucked by Avdol and him being like, "This is against my image."
You mean Joseph?
Yeah, Joseph. Sorry.
Yeah.
Cherry Prince Mundo is my favorite.
That would be Kakyoin.
I think individually they're not the most deep characters. Polnareff being the only really deep one that has some sort of connection to Dio to get back at him. Than Joseph and Jodo are like, we have to save Polly, and I'm like, okay. And Joseph
like, just feels guilty, so he's there for that. Iggy's just there because
he's a dog.
Yeah.
He has some good moments at the very end of the series, but like when you're introduced to him, he's just the dog. And like the thing about Joseph, it's kind of hard because we've already experienced Joseph's adventure, but he's almost a whole new character in this part, but he's also the same character, so it's a really weird kind of thing.
I thought the aging of Joseph was really well done, personally.
I do too.
He still gets through the essence of Joseph, but it's just weird to see him sidelined. But I like it. I might like old Joseph better than young Joseph, to be honest, which is not a very common opinion.
Right. I think I might be the same, but I also really like just those old man characters.
That's true. You just like yourself.
He's got those parts where he still goes, ultimate strategy, run away!
Yeah.
Jotaro does it once too in the fucking Yellow Temperance fight, which is another fight.
Yeah.
Well, y'all know me. I hate character development. So, part 3 is really high up on my list of like, these characters are static. They're gonna each learn one lesson. One of them's gonna die. One of them's gonna go blind and then die. And it's great. It all has this world building. I'm like, this was the closest it got for me as a.
Part 3 does have world building. It's just that the world building is a reflection of Araki's research of our own world.
Yeah.
But I think it's really charming when they go into restaurants and they have to learn how to order food there, or they're learning how to barter. Or my favorite one is in the manga in particular. They get to India and Avdol's like, this place is great. Everyone's so friendly. You're going to love it. And you turn the page and you have this two-page spread of just 1,000 Indians surrounding the JoJo crew, asking them for money and just trying to sell them shit. And I think it's just so fun, and like I like all the locations they visit. There's some really pretty ones too.
Yeah.
I think, and this is a really hot take, but I think we all kind of share this take. Part 5 is like a better executed Part 3, but Part 3 is also somehow better. Just from the characters. Like, each individual character in Part 5 is so much deeper, but the group dynamic in Part 3 is so much easier to latch onto.
It's a lot more fun in Part 3. Part 3 feels like you're actually on a road trip, enjoying the time with these characters, and that eventually it's going to come to an end. Like you have an X on the map where you need to get to. Yeah. Part 5 is like, oh, we have to go here. Now we have to go here. Now we have to go here. Now we have to go here. But actually, we have to go here. So you're going all around the place, but you don't really know where you're going.
Also, Part 5 only takes place in 5 days.
Yeah.
While this is a exhaustive, like, 50-day journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at the end of the day, we'll table this for a little bit, but at the end of the day, I think the journey aspect is what makes Part 3 redeemable, despite, like, some of its more aged concepts and portions.
I know if we're comparing it to Part 5, I know what the specific element that I think puts this above Part 5 for me is the main characters, like the JoJos, because Jotaro and Giorno are both actually pretty stoic guys, and there's not a whole lot going on there, but Jotaro actually does change in some ways over the course of his journey.
In very nice, subtle ways too, right?
Yeah, at the beginning, he really is just like a punk teenager, and he's like, fuck you, mom. But by the end, I was really proud of him. I'm like, he's a man now. And yeah, I mean, he's still a rough dude, but he knows when to give respect. And he did this whole journey for his mom, who he was cussing out at the beginning. And I think by the end of this, I can see how he became the more responsible Jotaro we see in later parts.
Yeah, like end of Part 3, Jotaro is the same man who says, we have been through this impossible journey. Don't tell me what's impossible, before he revives fucking Joseph Joestar.
Yeah.
And as a line that's really cool, it's like, he never once really complained about the journey, just complained about everyone else's antics. But he just he went on this journey to save his mom, and he was just super cool and stoic about it. But what really gets me is when he hugs Polnareff and old Joseph, the only people who survived with him. And it feels like such a genuine hug. And you see how much he's grown to like these people despite trying to act so cool and pretending like he doesn't. And that's endearing in its own way.
And then, I don't know, is this an anime only thing when we get that shot of him on the plane with the picture? Or is that in the manga?
The picture is not in the manga because it only shows up in Part 5, and then they retroactively added it to the anime. But
yeah.
You get the shot of him in the plane looking out longingly, I believe.
Because
the last shot is them walking away in their 3 directions. It's one of the two.
Yeah.
I mean, y'all know me.
Wait.
I hate character.
No, you do hate character development. I'll be right back because I can get the mangas right now.
While he does that, I'm gonna say my bit. I hated Part 5. Doesn't even come close.
Part 5. I don't know if it's my least favorite part, but it's down there, man.
It's right down there above Part 1.
I will say probably the anime adaptation was probably not that good. If that's why I disliked it so much, I could agree with that.
The anime adaptation, I think, actually makes Part 5 a lot better than it was originally, in my opinion.
Really?
Part 5 was a great anime.
Yeah. So the last shot is them walking away and the plane flying over.
Yeah, I got my volume 18 here. God damn, that's a thick boy.
We need some camera work, Willer.
My camera doesn't work on this computer, unfortunately. So they're walking away, and then you get this plane shot flying back, and you get to see the globe.
Yeah.
It's like the entire length of the journey they traveled. You get to see it here in this last shot, which is kind of beautiful.
But I like that last shot for just Jotaro alone because you see Jotaro like looking at the picture and kind of like realizing like this whole experience they had has been a memorable one, and Joseph's looking at him, being you can tell Joseph is just does a small smile and realizes that it's had an impact on him, and it kind of ends tragically because literally everyone dies but 3 people, but at the same time it just was a point where Jotaro was like, oh, I can actually appreciate people and who they are because they're not going to be around forever. And that's like the big thing.
We can transition into the second half talk now. Let's just we'll just to wrap it up in a long wrap up, I guess. When we hit that Egypt arc, even the first time I was reading it, that's when I got really into it. I was back in because the second half starts introducing stands that are more like part 4 stands, where all of a sudden you have, okay, this stand is just water, but the way that it moves around gives an interesting fight mechanic when combined with the fact that Iggy can glide. And you have stuff like Oingo Boingo, which is a comedy arc that is also reused in the future while giving Oingo this weird character development. You get really cool stuff like Darby the Gambler and Darby the Gamer, which are the first game type stands that we run into, which end up being such an important archetype that help JoJo's not just be like fights to the death, but you can have these arcs where it's just Araki exploring the intensity of just a little game or a little wager. You have cool stuff like Bastet and Mariah who can magnetize people into such funny scenarios with Joseph and Avdol.
Man, this is the electrical outlet is the stand, and it's just so hilarious because it's an American outlet.
But they touch it anyways. It's great. I really like the finisher of that fight where they crush her and they just double penetrate her.
Oh, great!
Sides.
I love double penetration.
Horus, the most terrifying stand.
Right, maybe my favorite fight, my favorite action fight of JoJo's, where it's just like this is just hardcore action. Horus would rank pretty high up there. It's like the White Album fight where it's just this hot-blooded fight involving ice. Pet Shop is by far my favorite villain of Part 3 because it's just a bird who is the Terminator.
I think a testament to how well executed this fight was is that it actually made me care about Iggy for a few moments.
Absolutely.
Like, in his most dying moments, I was actually really rooting for him, which I never thought I would do because Iggy's my least favorite character in this part. But during this fight, I was like, come on, man, you can do it.
And they do it by having him save the little boy, and he's fighting so tough. What's cool about Iggy is that he doesn't have a horse in this race until this fight gets him invested, because it just pisses him off hard enough to get him in there.
Yeah.
He loses a leg, and he's just like, all right, that's it.
I gotta kill this motherfucker. And then you get freaking Vanilla Ice, man.
Yeah. I say ew as in it's terrifying and just...
That fight, I don't like stuff that's overpowered. That is that overpowered. Like, Vanilla Ice has such a minuscule weakness to how powerful he is.
It's a minuscule weakness that only happens because... Well, I guess you're talking about he can't see anything. I was going to say the only way to beat him is because he turns into a vampire and they push him into the sunlight.
Which is nice.
Yeah, there are some of these guys that I'm like, why are they Dio's henchmen?
Well, about being Dio's henchmen, I think a line that really makes me like this last group of henchmen is Endul, the first one they fight that has Geb, the water stand. When he's about to die, he says, "Evil also needs a hero."
Oh.
And I think that's a badass line to show why these people would be following him without flesh buds. It's like, we're all kind of rotten people, and we've come to realize that. But Dio's this charming hero to the rotten.
It's like they need to unite them. Otherwise, they'd kind of be lonely in their...
You can bring them to heaven.
Yeah. I guess
Speaking of Dio, he's pretty cool.
It's a good segue into Dio, right? So, Part 3 Dio's weird because he loses a lot of the emotional connection that made Part 1 Dio such a good villain for the time.
Like eye lasers.
Like, yeah, that's what made Dio so good, and being able to freeze your pee-pee by touch. But Dio in Part 3, Dio with all caps as he's known now, is really entertaining nonetheless because he's such a demanding presence.
Yeah. He is like the incarnation of the menacing sound effect, basically, in this part.
He really is, and his fight is not what I expected it to be. It's a lot more technical, a lot more strategic than what Jotaro versus Dio would lead you to believe, right? There's a lot of tricks being pulled both ways.
There's only really one straight up fighting part, and that's when they're in the street and they punch each other so hard they gain the ability to fly.
The anime treated that so weird because, in my impression, they were all jumping around.
Yeah.
And to some degree they are, but the anime is just like, they're jumping around, but they're also like going zoop, zoop, zoop in the sky. Which is weird. But alright. The only other times that people have flown in JoJo's is at the end of Part 5, someone starts flying, and in the rock, paper, scissors fight in Part 4, where they're going so hard that they start flying.
Yeah.
So I tend to like Part 1 Dio as a character more, but Part 3 Dio, the fact that he shows up so late is not a good positive for him, but I do really like his final fight regardless.
I do. I like the final fight of Part 3 is one of the big reasons why I really like Part 3. And Part 3's final fight is one of my favorites still. There's just something about it that when they reach Dio and he just trounces on everybody. Like he like goes ham. Like he is the unstoppable force that they were afraid they were going to have to fight eventually.
And you know, I actually really freaking like Part 3 Dio. I don't know if I like him more than Part 1 because, like you said, like Part 1 Dio does a really good job of making you hate him and want him to lose.
Yeah.
And I think one reason I particularly like Part 3 Dio though is I think the one line that always stuck with me from Dio from Part 3 is where he says, you know, at the end of the day, the only thing that everybody is after is their own peace of mind. People just want peace of mind. It kind of lets me see into his motivations more than I'm just being shitty just to be shitty. He wants peace of mind, and what that means for him is being powerful and being able to dominate and eliminate people, which it kind of makes sense that peace of mind for him would be power, because when he was little, before the events of Part 1, he came from a place of no power in life.
Yeah.
So I really like it.
It's also not to talk too much about Part 6, it feeds really nicely into some Part 6 stuff.
Yeah.
As the fight itself is also a reason why I think Part 3 might edge out 5 for me. I think the last fight of Part 5 is a horrible mess, as I've talked about in the podcast before. Part 3's fight is really cool, and it's split up into two halves, and I like them both equally. The first half is the Kakyoin half, and the Joseph half, and that one has a lot of emotional stakes as they desperately try to find out what Dio's power is, which has been a recurring plot thread since they've gotten midway through Egypt. They're like, all right, we need to buckle down and start interrogating some of these fools for what his power is. So
that was always something that I think was brought up throughout the entirety of this part, was that the biggest step you can take against the stand is figuring out what it can do. Yeah. And if you can see what your stand can do for a long period of time, you have the advantage for a lot longer.
Yeah.
And you get... go on.
I was going to say that was like the world building aspect that I will say that like kept me so motivated and interested, was them looking for the power, but also the looming presence that he held. And it's like, it was kind of like a timer where like they're constantly trying, like as they get closer to him, they still can't figure out the power.
Yeah.
And it's like they're just trying to figure it out. It's like a deadline of you trying to finish your homework or something, or like some project. It's like the deadline's coming up, but it's still, it's like, it's weird because you think that they could have just taken more time or like investigated more, but they really couldn't. They always had to be moving forward towards it.
They have the second timer of Holly's death, which is
Yeah.
a good structure for this journey. You got Holly dying, and I really like how you brought that up. The closer and closer to get the Dio, the less and less time they have to figure out his power, and they critically don't figure it out until they're fighting him. And to figure it out, Kakyoin has to die, and at this point, Iggy and Avdol have also died. So that's 3 deaths before they can even figure out Dio's power, leaving 3 Crusaders left to somehow deal with it. Which is a really good setup for the second half.
How did Avdol die? Did he just get like straight up murdered?
Yeah.
No, I straight ate him. Like he's out of that fight immediately.
Yeah, he pushes Iggy and Polnareff out of the way.
Oh,
I was
God.
shocked when that happened. I legitimately thought that he wasn't dead and he was just like sucked into whatever and they were gonna get him back. I was like, oh, he's dead.
Me too.
Dead. It just happens.
From the JoJo's that I've seen so far, part 3 really tugs emotionally at you with the loss of those characters.
And getting down to it, I think that's part 3's ending's best strength is the fact that it was exhausting to read part 3, right? It's so long and there's so many fights, but that ends up being a strength when at the end these characters that you've slaved away with die. It hits you really hard. You're like, oh my god, y'all came so far. 2 of you didn't even get to the final boss. Y'all died on phase 1 out of like 4. Oh, it's heartbreaking. And it makes...
Imagine basically a Pokemon Nuzlocke.
Yeah.
You made Elite Four and you lost in the first.
That's rough, man. Avdol's your starter and he just dies immediately. It's a really cool aspect. And then the second half of the fight is Jotaro versus Dio, and I really like the tricks that Jotaro has to pull off in order to kind of give himself enough time to realize how he's going to counter the world, which at first is just like, okay, as soon as the time stop ends or he gets close to me, I'm just going to punch his face in. And that's a pretty good goal, and it works until he sucks Joseph's blood and becomes high Dio.
Or even before then, at that point, he's just like, well, I'm just going to throw knives at you now. And he just starts throwing knives. And there's one of my favorite sequences in the whole fight is when Jotaro's on the ground, he has to pretend he's dead. He has to wait for Dio to get close enough and just punch him in the face. Like, it's one of my favorite moments because he's sitting there and he has to, like, stop his heart and he has to hold his breath. And it's just a painful experience. And then he finally is able to pull it off. And you get this great, like, in the anime, like, rolling credit sequence where he's just like, I'm going to fucking beat you now.
Yeah, Dio's crawling away and he makes it to Joseph. And then, man, the anime does the road roller so well. The setup for the road roller, I never realized how good it was. It was just a meme to me until like I watched it for the first time in the anime. Because I've read it. Road roller was like the first JoJo meme I've ever seen. I was like, haha, funny. But it's basically just like, I'm pissed off. We're at the end of this fight. The next time I see Dio outside the time stop, I'm going to end it with a single punch. Which is a really cool setup for that ending, right? And it's so crushing when the next time he sees Dio, there's a giant road roller between the two. And he is not going to get that clean punch in.
It's funny. I remember hearing, like, JoJo obviously blew up a lot when the anime came out. And that's when I'd say, like, most Western people got on the train. But I remember hearing back in the day, like a decade ago, if someone was in the JoJo, it was probably because of road roller flash animation memes.
Hell yeah. Which also had part 5 animation, so there was some deep cuts in there.
Along with part 3, isn't there a 90s animation version of it?
Yes, there is the 90s OVA.
We still need to watch that.
No, I'm good, man. I've
watched
some
parts of it. I've watched a lot of it, actually, like good parts, but there are some of it that I really like. One thing that stands out in particular is they hold off on showing you the world a lot longer in that OVA to the point you only see it when Jotaro actually sees it. Like, there's a point where he's walking up to Jotaro and the world is just, like, destroying things and it's invisible. And then finally when they come into contact, it shows up.
The one thing I like about the OVA better is The heart stop scene is a lot more excruciating in that scene. They hold it off for longer, which I think was a good call. Anime versus manga comparisons. When Kakyoin's about to die, in the anime, we just see him suddenly fly back, and then he has to figure out, and then we get the flashback of what Dio did in the stop time. In the manga, you just see the stop time the first time, so you don't get that expended or extended suspense to what the power actually is. And I think I like how the anime did it better as a result. Part three, good. I did mention the one thing I always complain about it, which is, I can also stop time. Same type of stand.
Oh my god! So it's the same type of stand as Star Platinum.
That meme of him saying that's a rat and then turning Star Platinum into a sniper rifle is the best.
So I will say though, I like that before. So when I was watching the series, I totally forgot about Dio with his whole Hermit Purple bullshit and having that had to be retconned as Jonathan's stand or whatever.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, it kind of was a parallel of like Dio stole Jonathan's stand essentially, like stole his bloodline, and he's getting the stand because he has his body, and Jotaro inherits the stand later and is able to beat back and claim what's rightfully his bloodline's power. Yeah. That was always my first interpretation of it.
It's funny. It's funny how our minds have to work to make a Rocky bullshit work.
Yeah, Will and I carry Rocky through a lot of dumb things.
Yeah, part of being a JoJo's fan is having to do half the writing work for a Rocky.
I didn't get to that point around like the end of part 6, beginning of part 7 for a very long time. I was like, JoJo's is bullshit, man.
And then you turn out that Rocky just needs a whole month to write his chapters, and he's really good.
Yeah. Man, going monthly was the best decision that man ever made.
But anyways, part 3 good. Willard, let's do our rankings.
Right. We have been doing rankings. It's just been so long since we... Hold on, let me go get my charger just in case.
I forgot what I ranked them last time. I hope I'm...
You have to re-rank them.
I hope I'm consistent.
I have a relatively strong idea of what my ranks are, if I remember correctly. We've done 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7.
So, as you'll recall, we're gonna play a little game here. You're gonna rank what we've covered. You're gonna rank the main villain, the main JoJo, the arc as a whole, and then also say your top 3 favorite arcs of part 3. Specifically.
Okay.
Let's do villains first. I would go. Ooh, this is kind of tough. So we've only done 1, 2, 3, 5, 7. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I would go Valentine first, and then Dio 1, Dio 3. Diavolo Cars. Those are my villain rankings.
I would go. This is for my villains. It'd definitely be Valentine, Dio Brando, Dio, Cars, Diavolo.
Yeah, I think I'll go Valentine, Dio 1, Dio 3, Cars, and then fuck Diavolo. I just hate it.
Tyler, you can do them all except 7.
So I'm gonna go with Valentine first.
You don't even know. You're not wrong.
Part 3 Dio.
Ooh.
All right.
Then I'm gonna go with Cars and the rest of the Statue Boys. Part 1 Dio, and then Diavolo.
All right.
I'm the only one who didn't. I put Diavolo second to last. I am the hero everyone needs. Protagonist wise, I would go Johnny, Jotaro, but my opinions on Jotaro are a little tainted because he's so good in 4. And then Joseph, Giorno, Jonathan.
I have the exact same.
Nice.
I have the exact same, I think, as well.
Nice.
Actually,
Wait.
it's above Jotaro for me.
Let's see. I'm gonna go part 2 first.
Yeah.
Then 3 because I can't remember all the Joes. No, wait. Part 2, then 4.
No, we're not doing 4 yet.
Oh yeah.
Spoiler alert.
2. 7.
7.
3.
Oh, we forgot 7.
I give up. Same.
I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Johnny's at the top for me for sure. We've totally skipped over Johnny for some reason.
I did not. I put him as my first.
Did
should-
you?
Sure.
Okay.
Same.
Oh, yeah.
All right, part
Johnny
ranking. Part rankings should be a lot easier for me. It goes 7. Actually, it's not that easy because 7 and then 2, 3, and 5 do like a little triangle dance where depending on the day they'll be next.
Mhm.
And then 1.
Mine is definitely 7, 3, 2, 5, and then 1.
Mine's the same as Joe's.
Mine is I will actually leave 7 out of this since I haven't seen it and I do care about whether it's better or not for the plot. 1, 3, 2, and then 5.
Homeboy just put part 1 as his favorite.
That is the only reason I kept watching the show.
Wow.
Oh, Tyler.
Hot take.
Tyler hates character development. He said it himself, boys.
Yeah.
I hate character
My
development.
favorite farts. My favorite farts in part 3 are
Iggy.
Pet Shop, Dio, and Darby Gambler.
I think my favorites would be in no particular order.
Yeah.
Darby Gambler, Mariah, and Lovers.
Lovers.
I like Dio, Darby Gambler, and Pet Shop.
Yeah.
I want to give a special shout out to Oingo Boingo and the second Whole Horse arc as my least favorite ones of the entire bunch.
Shout outs. Worse than fucking Blue Moon, where they're talking underwater, and barnacles are my power. All right.
I go in no order. Horus, or Pet Shop Oingo Boingo, Death 13, and Strength, or Forever.
Strength. Get this boy out of here.
That thing was so bad. It was so bad. I couldn't not look away.
All right, fair enough. Thank you for joining us to our JoJo show that is unnamed.
Goodbye, Juju.
Goodbye, JoJo. So me and Bradley are live with Arc 27 today.
Coming at you live.
Coming at you live. Though you won't be listening to this live.
Yeah, I was about to say, I guess it's not really live, is it?
Unless you've bugged our apartments.
It just feels like a thing to say.
We're coming hot off the heels of Arc 26, which ended with an absolute banger. And I gotta say, man, Arc 27's also really, really good. This was a very worthy follow-up to such a fantastic second half of 26.
Yeah, it's like we get to the end of 26 and like we kind of finally learn what the end of the world is going to be. And then 27 is just like kicking the balls after kicking the balls.
Yeah, because as soon as we get to 27, like in the first chapter, you already have a scene of Taylor traveling through Brockton Bay. And it's really interesting because you're seeing all these locations that you've read about so many times in the story, and they're just not there anymore. Like, there's no city anymore.
Yeah, it's just blown up.
Scion is just going on a rampage. In this chapter, what's that?
Scion on like a couple billion person kill streak.
Yeah, I think it might be in this arc where he hits. No, it's not in this arc, but we do get a number in I think 28 that is very alarming. Scion is definitely going for it here. This first chapter has a notable moment that I'd like to talk about, which is when Emma's family sees Taylor.
Yeah, and Emma's not with them.
Emma is not with them. She died the big hero that she was. There was something interesting, and it's been a while. So, full disclosure, it has been maybe 2 weeks to 3 weeks since I've read this chapter, this arc, which our schedules have been so hectic that I haven't had a chance to talk about it. But something about the wording of this encounter made it seem like so Emma died, and I think at some point Taylor wonders, it's like, oh, how come Emma died but none of the other people in the family died? For some reason, and they like blame Taylor for it. For some reason, I get the impression that Emma wasn't with her family, and like in my mind, I got this idea that Emma was in some sort of rehabilitation center because she kind of like mind snapped after Taylor's true identity was revealed. I don't know why I thought of that. I don't know if anyone else got that kind of sense that Emma was separated from the family because of Taylor to begin with, and that's why she died alone. She happened to be at the wrong location at the wrong time, and that's maybe why the family blames Taylor. I don't know.
No, I think you're kind of on it, because I got a similar kind of vibe where
Interesting.
After Emma found out about Taylor, I think she probably might have snapped, like, oh my god, like, this person who's been mutilating all these people in my city probably had really good reason to want to fuck me up.
Yeah.
I think generally the way this is viewed is back whenever like Emma first got like assaulted in her interlude, she had like a period, I think, of like a few weeks / months where like she just would not leave her room because she was just like so scared of the outside world. The way I see it is like learning about Taylor being Skitter might have like put her back in that mood, where she just like stays cooped up all the time, and when it came time to evacuate, maybe her family like could not coerce her to go with them.
That's a really good way to look at that.
Because like I think that's like, but you're right, like the only way it would make sense that her family's here and Emma's not is like if she was in a different location.
I mean, not the only way, but like in a storytelling sense, it's the most likely way given how the information is given to us. Do you think there's any Tyler posted something very funny. Do you think there's any way that Jesus Christ.
Do we want to can we just talk about this?
Yeah, little interlude here.
Tyler, just in the middle of that sentence, Tyler posted this image in our little Discord chat. Are these official PlayStation awards?
I don't know. It's some award show.
He posted the results of this award show where the silver trophy for best narrative went to Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and the bronze trophy for best narrative went to Kingdom Hearts 3. And so me and Willard just kind of started laughing.
There's a lot of that's funny. Even Kingdom Hearts 3 getting bronze is pretty funny, but the Call of Duty part kind of slayed me. Anyway, do you think there's anything in the text to maybe support that she maybe committed suicide? Possibly? As in she might have been dead before even the Scion attack, and that would very explicitly put the blame on Taylor in that way.
Yeah, I think that would kind of explain even more, because if it was just that like Emma wouldn't go with her family, then it might be less likely that they blame specifically Taylor. And you know, everyone, I'm sure everyone who like gets to the point of suicide might have like different reasonings, but I feel like they might be more likely to have a particular reason, and so you know, that might point her family more towards like, oh, you did this to our daughter.
There's also this idea that their tears looked fresh. I think it mentioned them having, they had the face of people that were crying recently, so maybe that contrasts that idea and goes more with she died in the attack. Anyways, Danny's also dead. Just throwing that out there, you know. That's worth mentioning. This Danny being dead situation super interesting, because Taylor never confirms it.
Yeah, even later on when she and like,
yeah,
I don't know. Did you specify that at the time of recording this you've finished the story?
I have not. So spoiler alert, I have finished Worm, but let's not talk about anything in detail. Let's just say this remains kind of mysterious.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say that Danny is super dead because even beyond Taylor reaching out to him in some way, I feel there's this point where Tattletale says I'm sorry for something, and why would she say that if she can't intuitively tell that it's exactly what happened?
Yeah, because like all of Taylor's super friends are pretty much still around at this point, so you kind of wonder who else would she be saying sorry about.
Yep. Well, interesting. Let's table that one. There could be something else. So, what else is going on over here?
What else we got popping in this story?
They got the cool meeting with Cauldron. I like how Bonesaw is here. Gru is just freaking out at the fact that Bonesaw is here.
I can't imagine how he probably feels being in the same room.
Taylor has some sympathy for her at some point. And you know, like, I do too. But granted, I know Bonesaw's backstory, and Taylor, I think, just kind of empathizes with Psycho sometimes, so...
He's like, I get you.
I get you, girl. Cauldron's true goal was revealed to always be preparing for the fight against Scion. We're gonna talk more about Cauldron in 29, I think.
Probably.
But yeah, we might as well save it for then. But yeah, Cauldron raises a lot of interesting moral quandaries when it comes to the story of Worm.
I kind of like some of the discussions they have in this kind of initial meeting, because there's a lot of we've talked about it before, where Worm has a lot of moments where it kind of makes you question like whether utilitarianism is always the right approach, and I think Cauldron is like taking whatever amounts of that we've seen in the story and like multiplying it to a much grander scale. Because like here they're like casually discussing handing over thousands of people to Mordnag.
Yeah, and like they're dealing with...
She can stop it.
Yeah, they're dealing with so many lives right now, and it's harrowing. And at the same time, it's hard to argue with given the circumstances. It's really well set up, I think.
And it's like Taylor has a particularly good exchange with Dr. Mother, and I don't have the exact quotes, but essentially Taylor's like, you know, you're talking about doing a bad thing for a good reason. And she's like, I've gone down that road before. I get it. But she's like, can you honestly say you're not going to have regrets at the end of the day? Because she's like, at this moment, Taylor is able to say there's a lot of things she's done that she regrets. But you have to also realize, especially with Dr. Mother's response, Dr. Mother has been doing the bad things for the right reasons for a lot longer than Taylor.
Like first say.
Yeah, like Dr. Mother's like, it has been a long time since I've lost sleep over anything that we've done.
That is a really good line too.
Yeah.
It's like, Jesus Christ, the level of jadedness.
She's so jaded.
Scion is revealed now to not be going on a full rampage and kind of tailoring his attacks to experiment with his rage. So I won't go in the rant right now, but when you have a character that's as overpowered as Scion, you get into these moments where it's like, man, we sure are lucky that they're not just obliterating us. And the explanation for it's given here. It's that Scion is experimenting and he's brooding and he's just kind of trying to reverse all the good that he did. I have no problems with a villain losing because they were fighting at 50% power. You know, like, I wasn't serious until too late, so I lost because of it. But Scion here is fighting with 2 to 5% power, if at that. Given the fact that he can just destroy continents, there's gonna be some moments where I'm gonna bring this back up as kind of something that irks me about the luckiness that our protagonists are getting here. There's definitely an amount of plot armor that I think... I mean, plot armor is just a fact of life, and I don't think you should really worry about it too much if it is in stories, but I think it is worth mentioning that it's there, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we like briefly discussed it while you were reading it.
Mm-hmm. I'll bring it up again as certain points happen.
I'm probably like a little bit more okay with it because like his initial attacks were like the subcontinent destroying blasts, and then I think they kind of have the reasoning there why like he's kind of doing like more personal attacks.
Mm-hmm. And they utilize the multiple Earths as also a way to slow him down narratively.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, in 27.3, they reveal that 500 million people are dead. And this is happening while Taylor is talking to Sophia, and Sophia doesn't even bat an eye to that. She just keeps being snarky to Taylor, which is... oof. That girl's got some issues.
And one thing I really love during their conversation is throughout the story, there's been several moments that we are able to point out where Taylor can specifically look at like adversaries of hers, like Lung and Bakuda and Jack, and she can like recognize how they've changed her and like the personality traits she's emulated from them. And then Shadowstalker's like, oh, like, I'm kind of responsible for you. She's like, you got this from me. And Taylor's like, fuck you. She's like, and then she tries to consider, like, well, is she right? But,
well, let's talk about it, right? I think she's more right than Taylor would like to admit, to be honest.
Yeah. Because
even though, like, there's no doubt that those 3 or 4 big villains that Taylor fights, like, the things she picks up from Bakuda and Jack and kind of like in a smaller scale Coil and Mannequin, like there's multiple times where she thinks back to how they made her feel and how they changed the way she acts. But when you really get down to it, the void in her heart wouldn't have been so big in the beginning of the story if it wasn't for Sophia and Emma. Also, you told me Madison would come back in relevance. We can talk about it maybe in the last chapter, but you lied to me. unless I missed something huge, which I can't wait. So, yeah, like, where was I? Yeah, I think Sophia got her to the state to where this was a lonely girl who wanted to make friends with villains because that's the only thing that was filling the void in her life at that time. And, I mean, that was the catalyst to all of this mess. So, yeah, Sophia, I'd say, has a huge impact on Taylor, despite what Taylor says.
Yeah, she had a huge impact. And I don't think it's the same impact where it's like like Taylor learned a lesson from Sophia that she consciously emulates like she does with Bakuda.
Mm-hmm.
But she had an impact in that, like, Taylor would not be who she is, and she would have never even started this journey in the first place if Sophia never came along.
You know, you love comparing Taylor to Walter White, and I think this is a super apt time to do it. So let's do it, right? Because as you might recall in Breaking Bad, Walter takes a lot of traits from the people that he ends up killing.
Yeah, he's like, need to be, like, he's specifically like, we need to be more like Tuco, you know?
Yeah, and then, like, for example, with Crazy 8, it's in the first 3 episodes, he likes the crust cut out of his sandwiches, and in the future, from that point on, anytime Walt has sandwiches, he also cuts his crusts. Ooh. So he also takes little traits like that, right? But, so that will relate to Taylor and Bakuda and Jack and such. But fundamentally, Taylor and Walter were broken from the beginning from gray matter and from Sophia. So like it's a difference of picking up traits from those people versus having your worldview shattered from previous events, and I think Sophia is in that part, and Taylor doesn't quite even realize it, I think.
Yeah. So thank you, Sophia.
Thanks, Sophia. So if you follow this whole journey, there's been a couple of times where I am kind of hard on the dialogue in Worm, but you know, when credit is due, I gotta give it. And I think as I was reading this conversation between Sophia and Taylor, I just really thought back to how Wildbow wrote in the beginning of Worm, and the difference in skill level is significant. Where I think Sophia has such a good voice in all these interactions with Taylor. There's even moments where she's trying to sound smart and she doesn't remember which word to use, so she asks Taylor for assistance on how she can roast her. It's just so far gone from the complaints I used to have with Worm. So
yeah, and I know there's other chapters coming up that you also said like this is just noticeably better than the beginning of the story.
It's crazy, man.
Which yeah, I guess at this point he's written like several novels worth of chapters. So,
and let's be clear, this is not a sudden change. It has gradually been this way for quite a while. This improvement you could really track down. And I think a cool part of following long-running series such as, say, One Piece and JoJo's and Worm is you get to track how your artist evolves in his storytelling, in technical levels, and I think that's a really fun kind of idea with tracking just an artist's journey, you know, through their works, which kind of
because like JoJo's, the type of story you have in parts 1 and 2 is so vastly different from like part 7.
Yeah, and this is just with Worm within a singular story you can track that journey because it's just so long, you know.
Yeah,
and I really like it. All right, let's talk about a negative. Let's do a negative after that positive.
Put Wildbow on blast.
I can't fucking stand the Fairy Queen.
Let's hear it.
Or as I like to call her, Exposition Queen, because I'm not one to be like, oh, this is obvious exposition, which means I'm smarter than the writer, so therefore I feel better about myself. But there are times where it's like, Jesus Christ, everything this character says is cryptic exposition, where either I can't understand half of it, or the other half is just telling another character something about the kind of background layer of the story that like us humans can't really comprehend. But Fairy Queen is there to just lay it all out. There's some moments where Tattletale gets like this in the later arcs too. Like even stuff that we've covered that has Tattletale kind of just becoming exposition bot for a little bit. But Fairy Queen is just that the whole time. I'm not even going to try to say her name. Glastic Uwenwe. But I found out how that's spelled, by the way.
It's funny. I never knew how to pronounce it until like I looked up like the official specified pronunciation. And it's supposed to be like Glastic, like plastic with a G.
Yeah.
And then Winye.
Glastic Wayne.
Master Wayne.
So there's probably a lot of symbolism you could draw from Taylor choosing the black outfit as opposed to the Weaver outfit. Yeah. I'm definitely going to touch on this. I think it's part of next arc. But Taylor just, man, she never even gave the Chicago team a chance. Like, she never, ever, ever opened her heart to them. Even with her bonding with Golem, at the end of the day, she was always more comfortable being Skitter. And, like, I'm not going to say she was always Skitter, because her time as Weaver has impacted her. Now it's often times she just calls herself Taylor in this, like, last section of the story. But, yeah she was way more comfortable as
and, like,
Taylor.
Speaking of her costume choice, the really good Taylor moment I think we do get out of the Fairy Queen talk is that she notices the Queen's, like, shades that, you know, follow her around because of her power. And she'll see that on these people, who are obviously dead capes that she's claimed in the past, the line between like their costume and their body is kind of blurred, where it's kind of like, is their identity more who the person was, or is it more what their cape identity was? And then Taylor can kind of ponder, if I were to die and she claimed me, what would the shade look like? Would it look like Skitter, or would it look like Weaver, or would it look like Taylor? Or if it was a blend, like, you know, which one is it going to see more of?
I think her costume in this arc is the black, but with white elements.
Yeah.
So she took certain elements of Weaver, but at the end of the day, her base is black. And I think that's very indicative of who Taylor is. Like, at her core, she's kind of has villainous tendencies, but she's picked up armor pieces and traits of being heroic. Which is completely opposite of how she thought she would start this journey. But all that to say, I think her final costume would look something like that, maybe.
Yeah, and it's just cool, because while she's putting it together, I think when she makes the choice to use the black as a base, she kind of thinks to herself that when she was at her strongest is also when she was kind of at her most monstrous back in the day. So she needs some of that power.
Man, Gru was right. The more I think about it, and we'll touch on it later too, but back then, do you remember we were talking about Arc 13? I was like, man, like I'm not the biggest fan of Taylor, and these days I'm squarely on team Taylor sucks, but back then I was like, I'm not the biggest fan of Taylor, but like Gru's being pretty harsh here. I don't think she's really as manipulative and opportunistic as he says she is, but I don't know, maybe he was onto something. Maybe I was being too kind.
Yeah, that's the talk you're talking about, is where I think after they rescue him from Bonesaw, he's always like, you know, you're the one always making these plans, and we go with them. And sometimes things turn out even worse than they would have been anyway.
But you thrive from it because you're so good at thinking on your feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, we know how much Taylor likes going along with her plans.
The only plans that matter. So, they're doing these waves of attacks on Scion. And I think they're 3 waves in before the F cannon or whatever it's called just destroys Scion and sends him into space, and he just immediately goes to the platform with all the heroes, and he looks pissed, and the chapter ends like that. And this was a huge turning point of this arc, because boy, shit hits the fan immediately after that.
Like, they yeet him into space, and then like foolish me is like, oh, that maybe actually kind of did something, and then he just like immediately is back there.
Not only did it not do much, but it made him just decide to attack the hero group anyways. So he drops a big spirit bomb onto this platform in what might be the most tense chapter in the story.
Yeah.
Because everyone is rushing to get away. Time is moving so slowly with the narration, because there's just so much chaos going on. It was really well executed. Parts of it are like, Taylor's looking at people and she's like, oh, they're done. There's no way they can get away in time. She can barely get away in time. She loses an arm and a leg, half of her torso. She becomes a fucking insect person.
Yeah, she gets like cut in half and then becomes this insect person. And then I pulled up the table of contents. I was like, there's 3 more arcs?
Right? So in my mind, like, they kind of back out a little bit, they being Wide Boy. It's like, no, it's temporary. But I was like, oh my god, 3 arcs of Insect Taylor? I don't know if I could get down for that. But it would have been super interesting. So, for some reason, this line where Taylor is falling and all she can think about is when Legend says, if water hits you or you hit water fast enough, it's worse than concrete. And just the thought of that going through her head as she's about to splat into the water just made the situation even more tense. This whole chapter was, like I said, it's maybe the most tense chapter in I can say now all of Worm. It was so hectic, and there's this really stealthy reveal that Clockblocker died in that attack because he's being used by Fairy Queen.
Yeah, and that's I think that's a cool way to reveal it.
Yeah, man. Clockblocker was a good one to kill because I really ended up liking Dennis.
And man, with the Fairy Queen in this chapter, this really like moment that just like really I was gonna say put butterflies in my tummy, but that's like that doesn't have the right connotation. But it's a similar feeling where the Fairy Queen is floating over the mortally wounded Taylor, and she's just like grinning nastily over her, waiting for Taylor to die.
Fucking Christ, I forgot about that. Woo! I'll take that for things I want to see in the adaptation with a water filter between them because Taylor's drowning. That's awesome.
Oh, and like the water filter gets more pronounced over the course of a few seconds, like she's sinking.
Oh man, that's a good one. So, did anyone else notable die here? Because Clockblocker was the only one that really hit me. It was really chaotic too, so I might have missed some people. Well, so no spoilers. But is there anyone else that was named that I didn't realize?
I'd have to skim through the chapter.
Because I found out. I found out after we talked about 26, because I listened to We Got Worm, that Annex died in the time skip or something like that, or maybe in the 9 fights, and I completely missed that.
Tough break.
Rip Annex. Not even shit happens, bitch, because Annex was an alright dude.
He's alright.
Eidolon interlude. Boy. I love this interlude, man. Eidolon is a fascinating character. So, this whole interlude plays out as Eidolon and Fairy Queen are the only two combatants left. Pretty much. Everyone else is just kind of reeling from that attack. And it flashes back twice, I believe. Once to the day that Cauldron was outed, and Eidolon has to sit there as they all talk to Doctor, and Legend is furious, and they just... there was this plot point where... I'm not going to remember it in full detail because I didn't write the notes in. But, like, Cauldron says that they could send the Slug, which is the guy from Arc 17, to go wipe memories if they need to. Like, I think they even say we can wipe your family's memories so that they don't know that you're a part of this or something like that. Which was a really cool throwback because one of our commenters pointed out earlier that this Slug Man was a Cauldron cape and also was the one who wanted to eat dreams in Arc 17.
Yeah, and that's really cool because it's like a really... Like, it's just like a really small throwaway that, like, I had never caught before.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm sure there's plenty of stuff that I haven't caught that you also haven't explained to me. Maybe stuff we both didn't catch because there's just so much to Worm. So, this whole chapter... so it has those flashbacks. The second flashback is a man... I believe he's 27... It was 27 years ago. A man is in a wheelchair and he makes the deal with the devil where he decides to join Cauldron and get superpowers. And from that day on, all Eidolon has is his pride as the strongest man alive. Yeah. And there's multiple times this chapter where he laments that he is no longer the strongest man alive.
Yeah, and I just love that, like, the way he talks about it, he kind of explains his position in the world as if it's some kind of sacrifice where he's like, oh, you know, this is all my life is I have to be the strong one and I'm always saving people. But I think we know the truth is that he fucking loves being the strongest guy in the world a little too much.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So I wonder how I feel about this because I kind of bought maybe like it was so well explained as a rationale that I kind of bought into it where this is a pathetic man who everyone calls him ugly every time they get a chance.
Yeah.
He is the plainest looking dude. He had no future, as he was crippled. I believe there was a thing with like his family not really being close to him anymore. And he gets his second chance, and this is a man who had nothing, and now he has a superpower. So all he can do is put 100% of his all in his superpower, because even now that he has that power, people still don't care for him outside of his ability to fight.
Yeah, so he just has to, like, press the gas pedal even harder into his whole being the best thing.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of him enjoying being the best a lot, but I would lean more on the side of, like, maybe sympathy for him, because it's all he has and he doesn't have it anymore, and he's watching it all crumble around against him, and he's like, I was never the strongest man in comparison to Scion over here, who is ridiculous.
And like, it is really sad, like how badly he kind of needs this image for himself, because like we remember back in the Noel arc, he was willing to let this potential S-class threat like destroy everything for a chance that it would be like a worthy fight for him.
Yeah.
He just really wanted a worthy opponent.
We'll save that bit, but I can kind of sort of like sympathize and relate with him, where like sometimes you feel like your life doesn't have much going for you, but you have this one thing that you could put all your focus in, and it'll make you feel better. And if you get really good at it, maybe it'll make not having other things in your life, I guess, hurt less. And I think that's a really easy to sympathize with emotion for some people, myself included sometimes.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is a super well executed trope of the man who is obsessed with power. It's a fantastic execution of it, and proof that tropes are not inherently bad, because it ended up, like, Eidolon ended up being one of my favorite characters. You'll find out at the end of Arc 31 who all of our actual favorites are.
Yeah, we did all of our top fives for the story.
And by 31, I mean Tenral, but whatever.
Yeah, that, I think you're right. That, like, I hadn't quite thought about it to that degree, but that is, I think, something a lot of people can relate to on some level, where if there's one thing you're really talented at, and in your, like, say, friend group or family, that's like the thing you're known for.
Yeah.
And then someone else were to come along, if you lose that, or someone else came along and they were just way better at it than you, it's like, if that's part of your identity and you lose that, that could probably really hurt your ego.
Absolutely. Which makes it such a feel-good moment where he unlocks his true potential as the High Priest. Because thankfully Exposition Queen is here to confuse me, but make Eidolon realize his full potential of taking lives and obtaining their power, which is super dark.
Yeah.
And is the opposite of Glastic Wenway's power.
Yeah, and this is where it fully clicked to me what Glastic is supposed to be. Because we kind of know that at this point, shards each serve some kind of function for these. Glastic shard is essentially the one that is responsible. And she kind of has some insight.
Sorry, my internet goofed up there. Could you repeat what you were saying? You're saying Glastic Shard is the one that does what?
Yeah, Glastic Shard is like the one that's responsible for reclaiming all of the shards at the end of a cycle.
Oh, of course.
And it kind of explains what her power does. And she also has insight to the cycle itself, because she regularly talks about how in like 300 or so years, there's going to be some sort of, I don't know if she uses the word Ragnarok, but I think that's apt.
Yeah,
and
that's the vibe.
I think in Arc 26, like, that was around the timetable that Scion estimated.
Mm-hmm.
And so she can like reclaim and use the shards of dead capes. And I think the idea here was that Eidolon can do something similar. Either tap into, he can all like, I think his might be okay. Let me explain this. Like,
It seems like the idea would be then that Eidolon is to clean up any alive capes at the time of Ragnarok, yeah?
yeah, I thought like there were like two entities, so maybe it's like the same kind of shard, but one is from like, I think Glastix might be from Scions because I think she was natural,
Mm-hmm.
and Eidolon might be from the other one because he was a Cauldron Cape.
That would make sense. Ah, so you're saying we have the same type of stand. Eidolon kicks Scion's ass here, man. He is putting the pressure on.
Didn't I just vaguely remember this image in my head where he like instantiates a big metal ball inside Scion's head, which like inflates it.
Yeah, he tries to do that a couple of times even, but Scion starts dodging.
Yeah,
it's impressive at like, because Scion doesn't feel like he's holding back as much here. It seems like he's getting kind of serious, and Eidolon is keeping up, dude. He's using this really cool combination of powers. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, he can go above 3 now, right?
I don't quite remember, but he might be able to.
Possibly. Anyways, he's kicking ass. It was so feel good after he's reclaiming his place as the strongest man alive. But then, and I really want to see this either animated or live action, because this visual of them, of Scion being chased through galaxies and universes and dimensions or whatever by Eidolon is really cool, and Eidolon's just whooping him as much as a human could. But at the end of the day, it's not enough.
Yeah, Scion's like, time to use 2% of my full power.
And he says, and I really want comments and Bradley discussions over these lines. You needed worthy opponents. Which is a badass line. I don't know why, but it has such gravitas to it. And so if I'm understanding this right, this line broke him so much that Eidolon just stopped fighting. And
this line broke Eidolon so much that he essentially allowed Scion to end him.
Fuck me, man. So I remember you saying this was tapping into a Contessa style ability?
Yeah, after Scion said these words, Eidolon pretty soon, after Scion said these words, Eidolon is like, he must have Contessa's ability.
Right, I didn't get why he came to that conclusion.
I imagine that Contessa's ability can be used to find like the right thing to say to someone to convince them of a certain line of thinking, or change their mind about something, or if they're vulnerable, probably find the exact thing to say that they really don't want to hear. Eidolon's been working with Contessa for
years.
Yeah, over a decade at least, maybe more, and he's probably seen her do something similar to people. So I can give my interpretation on what Scion's longest line means.
Is this going to tap into 28 spoilers? Because
not very much. People were able to figure out what I'm pretty sure it means when the chapter itself came out. Because like when this chapter first came out, and you can even look at the comments for it, people were like, okay, we got to figure out what the fuck is going on here.
Right. As you do.
So, I guess, like, I might reference something at the beginning of Arc 28. Or I can not if you don't want me to.
I mean, spoiler alert for Arc 28 if you're following along. There you go.
Yeah. I didn't understand what this line might have been until in the beginning of Arc 28, Tattletale speculates that perhaps Eidolon was responsible for the creation of the Endbringers.
Right.
The way I see this similar to this puts me in the mind of Kevin Norton, but kind of on a much bigger scale, where Kevin Norton had this kind of aching fear in the back of his mind over the years where maybe millions more people could be alive had he said like one different thing to Scion.
Right.
And he was scared for a long time to meet with Scion again and give him the order to kill the Endbringers, because he's like, I don't know what I'd be able to do with myself if this suspicion was correct and all these people could have lived.
Mm-hmm.
I think the working theory, the working idea, and I don't even remember to what degree it's confirmed, is that subconsciously Eidolon, driven by his desire to be needed, as more and more powerful heroes appeared in the world, subconsciously was able to spawn Endbringers from his shard.
Okay. What? So I get that. As I was reading, I was like, okay, that's what happened, but I don't understand how. And in a story as focused on explaining things as Worm, not understanding that threw me for a loop. So you got something for me, Peter Parker?
Yeah, there's something in the Arc 29 interlude that I think makes this more viable.
Okay, let's table this and not forget it this time.
Yeah, I just think without explaining that next piece that we'll get to later, I think the way this is similar to Kevin Norton is like, the reason this line might have killed him is that if he suspected all along that maybe he was subconsciously responsible for the Endbringers, getting this confirmation that like tens of millions of people over the year died because of him is probably just killer.
Fuck me, man. That's
like,
so there's this idea that he might have known in the back of his mind. That's some heavy shit.
And Scion comes out and he says, "You needed worthy."
Oh, that's even better. That's horrible.
So that's my running theory on it. I don't know. I haven't really looked to see if Wildbow ever clarified exactly what this meant, but
people in the comments and
yeah.
Of YouTube and Reddits and emails all around, please let us know. Have you ever listened to the audiobook of this section, by the way?
No.
It's very interesting because...
Yeah. What was that chapter like?
So, I don't know how it's like in the web serial version, but in the audiobook it says, Scion says 4 words. Those 4 words, he must have Contessa's power, and then Eidolon stood still as Scion charged the lethal blast. And as that's happening, it's cutting into the end theme of that they always play at the end of the chapters. Then there is a 27 addendum.
Okay.
And it is a 16-second chapter that when you boot it up, it plays the opening theme that it plays in all the Worm chapters. And then there's just sounds of like wind and wave because they're in another planet. Whoa. And then in like a pitch toned voice, you just hear the 4 words, "You needed worthy opponents," and then the sound of a laser. It's super cool. They don't really do anything like this very often. Like doing atmospheric background noises and doing sound effects for the attacks, but this is maybe the one notable time they did it, and it hit me super hard.
Yeah, so I bet when you were hearing those effects, you're like, oh, some real shit's about to happen.
I was shocked to hear that when the...
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. I always wondered what exactly they did, but I never downloaded the 16-second chapter. But yeah,
Papa Rain blessing us with that one.
Yeah, in the actual text, you hit next chapter, and the only 4 words on the page are "You needed worthy opponents."
That's also so good.
And then like the comments are just people like, okay, what the fuck?
You should check it out, Bradley, because it's literally 16 seconds. But yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I want to hear that sound design.
Thank you for joining us for our Worm Talk of Arc 27.
Arc 27, baby.
Tune in next time for potentially 28 and 29 in one, if we can.
I think we might do a twofer.
Yeah, because we actually went for like 47 minutes for this one, but I think we'll go for less next time.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.